radio show that Sid would come on, a call-in radio show, I think in the 80s, where people could call in and voice their local concerns or, injustices or get advice. They could ask anything. And so that segment was called the Hellraisers. And I'll have you know that when I started putting this program together, I found myself at this moral crossroads of can I say the word hell up on the bima in my synagogue? Because I don't even really know that the Jewish people really believe in hell. I had all these internal what's the right thing to do? And then I have to ask myself, what would Sid do? And I ask myself that a lot in life. And honestly, it's it comes down to no, we've got to get this message out there, and we're retelling the legacy of something that was really powerful. And so in the name of justice and righteousness, I felt that it was still appropriate to be able to call this program the Hellraiser with all the most respect in the world as to what it means to raise hell. So thank you so much for sitting through that with us. It is on YouTube. You can find it anytime or share it with anybody to watch for free. And thank you to William Peck, who could not be here today, but Metaphor Media, who made that film with me. I'm really excited to invite up our panelists now. We've had a couple people drop out, but we have still 3 fantastic folks I would like to welcome to the Bima, to the stage. So Rabbi Mark Levin, who is the founding rabbi of Beth Torah, who led us all here. Please join us. And then we also have Laura McDonald, who is the executive director of the More2.org movement, which is the metro organization for racial and economic equality, who will tell you a little bit more about her work. If you could actually pop one more down. I'm going to sit here. Thank you. And then we have also, we have Alvin Brooks, who's in the house, the community organizer and friend and just all around Kansas City champion. So what's going to happen is I'll just give all of us a few minutes to kind of just introduce ourselves and say a few words. And then if there are any questions, I have a mic and I will come out to you and we will ask the question. And just so you know, we are live streaming this portion of it. So you may later hear about that. All right, so do you want to, we should be able to be heard from just these mics right here. The mics are on. Dave, can we get these?
Yeah, I need someone to talk.
Yep. So
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How's that? Can you hear us?
98765 4321.
So we just have to speak up. So welcome. Thank you for being here. Do you want to just say a few words about who you are and your relationship to Sydney?
Well, as you said, I'm Mark Levin. I'm the founding rabbi here. Sid was a challenge and an inspiration. I don't know how to talk about my relationship. One quick thing. I saw Sid within the context of the Jewish community. Rabbi, and now I can't believe it, I'm of course blanking on his name. The rabbi at Bnei Yehuda up through the 60s, up into the 60s, and hang on a sec, Rabbi Meyerberg, up until 62, wanted Sid to be a rabbi. It would have been a terrible mistake. Because Sid was a man of action. My rabbi in Washington, D.C.
This is not on.
My rabbi in Washington, D.C. Was inspired by the same person that helped to inspire Sid. And what I'm trying to point out is the generations of inspiration that affected one another and how those generations are important. Meyerberg saw Sid as being the kind of person that ought to be a community leader and a congregational leader, Sid found a much better way to accomplish what I think probably, I don't know how many of you know about Mayor Berg, but he was Mr. Social Justice in Kansas City. Sid fulfilled that role even better than Rabbi Meyerberg did. And so these generations that have inspired us, particularly important, and that's the context in which I see Sid.
Thank you. Hi, Laura.
Hi, so I'm Laura McDonald. I'm the Executive Director of More Squared. It's Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equity. And I think I'm also here because of your grandfather in a way, right? Because Sarah and I met through her community work through Beth Torah 15 years ago.
Yeah, the community is creating opportunities.
We did work we did a Project Abraham at 27th and Prospect. That's what I recall. I met you that day when we culminated the project, but created a community garden and did all this community cleanup stuff. And it was back then when you first mentioned your grandfather as a part of why you do what you do. So I think we're all here because of Sid in a way, right? So.
Well, my name is Alvin Brooks, and I met Sid and Lorraine. Sid first, I was chair of the Congress of Racial Equality, known as CORE. We were the subversive group in Kansas City, Missouri. We're the ones that created the sit-ins and the marches against the police department, City Hall, and public accommodations came in, and we demonstrated a place to refuse to accept people based on their race. And then I think it was the Bailey case where the late Bruce Watkins had brought, as I said, was chair of CORE, and we took on those kind of issues, and we didn't have any legal thing. We had a couple of lawyers that worked with us, but Sid came in, and Sid never wanted any help. He was, it's my case, it's my show, and I'm going to do it, and I'll see it to the end. And in that Bailey case, that Bruce, that's when I met Sid at Bruce's home in Parade Park, which is now being torn down, by the way. And there were several other cases I became involved with Sid. One case where two police officers took a black man into the Elmwood Cemetery over at Truman Road and Van Brunt and beat him, handcuffed. And another case was the case that was mentioned, I think it was mentioned where the situation occurred on 39th Street. I got involved in that. And there was another case, the lady who was of Africa, who was pregnant and was arrested by the white officers, and one of the white female officers, I think, the lady said, "I'm pregnant," and I think her water broke. Now, I have a late wife and 5 daughters. I know a little bit about water being broken. I don't mean the water that you turn on, this kind of thing. Anyway, I think as a result of that, she had a miscarriage. And Sid called me, and they hear around his house all these steps that he was going to take to deal with this case, from A, where she was stopped and where arrested, over here to where they go to court. And you had to step here. He was in his pajamas, and you had to step away. Don't say, "Watch out, Brooks, don't step out." So then the lady came in, and we kind of role-played this whole thing. Backing up just a little bit, Lorraine and my late wife Carol and Sid and I became very close. We're talking about just before and even after the riot. They lived on Forest. I don't know when they made the transition to South Kansas City, but Sid had a swimming pool. And he'd go down and bring black kids in to swim. And of course his all white neighbors got a little upset. I don't know if they knew anything about Sid's faith or not, but it got upset. And so we were sitting at that, I think it was that same table where Walt Bodine and Lorraine and Sid, we sat at that table. I think it was at the breakfast table, and talked about issues that Sid was just a bulldog at. I mean, when he got on to something, he didn't let it go. I remember when he talked to me about the Office of Citizen Complaint, and I was the Office of Community Complaint with the Police Department. So that was my fond remembrance of Sid, and we kept in contact after both of our wives passed. And in blessed memory, both he and Lorraine and Carol.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the important things about Sid, what was so impactful on me, was the man's courage. I'm Some of us remember Chief Kelly, who became the head of the FBI. And anybody besides me? Yeah, okay. So, Sid surprised Kelly with his witness. Kelly thought he was, at least the way that Sid told the story, Kelly thought he was going to get away with covering up what this officer had done. And Sid did not, at least the way Sid told me the story, did not tell him what was coming when he went into the office and could prove with witnesses that the officer was lying. And Kelly was caught either himself lying, if he knew, but certainly the officer lying, and that was in the movie. Well, if you've ever been in front of somebody like that, you don't want to embarrass those people. You don't want to embarrass the chief of police in the city you live in. It can have really bad effect on your life. But Sid was undaunted by the people that he confronted, and that was among the most impressive things for me. He pursued the truth wherever it went, and in that courage could be a model for the rest of us. There are a number of heroes around this city who will just pursue something to its logical end and accomplish wonderful things of justice that you think can't be accomplished. But Sid also had the intelligence and the legal training to be able to do that. But he's the model for the rest of us who are not nearly as courageous, but are at least willing to step forward and do what we can.
And to have been able to move, Kelly was retired from the Special Agent FBI, the New Orleans office, and came to Kansas City. I was on the police department at the time, and he came in 1961 when Bernard C. Brown, the chief, got indicted. And they used to call him Fearless Fosdick. You never saw Clarence Kelly smile. He grinned but never smiled. I never saw him laugh. And we were enemies for a while, and then we became very close friends before his passing on. But as the rabbi said, when Kelly got caught off guard because he came in during that transition period after Bernard C. Brown, and there was a lot of going on, indictments in the police department. And when I was there, I was just a young detective at the time. But, you talk about the blue line, the blue, all that. Kelly sustained that. And if he didn't himself, God bless his soul, didn't get caught up in the cover-up, the folks under him did, and by the time it got to him, he accepted what they said. Sid destroyed that relationship, and not only were people within the police department disturbed with Sid, but also with Kelly, because he had taken what Kelly said, and it first formally created the Office of Citizen Complaints, which the police officers were opposed to. They didn't want any oversight over them. And I had a complaint myself there, along with Sid, is that they use detectives to investigate complaints. And I made the statement appeared in the paper at the time. That's like Jesse James investigating Frank James, and that didn't go too well. But in fact, well, anyway. But Sid, Sid was a piece of art. That if you knew him, close to him, you loved him. And those folks who he opposed from the city and the city council and also the county, you heard in the county there what happened there when that office of ombudsman, a great human being. I don't know whether he done well as a rabbi, but he was certainly doing good well as a lawyer.
Well, and I know that he received some blowback. That people would come and write on his driveway, "Sid Willens must die" in paint. When he would do a big action or something would go public in the newspaper. There were people who were
That's when I think, he lived on Forest.
protesting him. Yeah. So, and he still continued to do that work. Is there anyone in the audience that has a burning question? I know this is a Q&A. Yes? All right, I'm going to come to you. And you can ask that. Hello?
Hello, my name is Glenn Esser, and I wanted to direct
uh, things have really changed today. Of course, we don't have the newspapers reporting as we once did. We don't have the same avenues. I know, Mr. Brooks, that you've done tremendous work in the police department, and I'm curious about the shortage of police that we have today in Kansas City. That I've heard it's like 150 police officers that we can't hire enough right now. Today's justice, what can we do as local, all politics are local and the national is horrific, but what can we do locally here to make a change in Kansas City?
I don't think your mic is working unless, Sid always reminded me that he was 16 years older than me. He was born, I think, in 1960, and I was born in 1932, but I think I heard most of what you said. First of all, the Kansas City, Missouri Police Department is the only police department in the nation that's under state control. It ought to be under city control. The mayor and the council can be just as honest here as the out-state legislators are, including the governor, who is the appointing authority of 4 persons, and the 5th mayor serves as the 5th member of that by virtue of office. I served on the police department. I served on the Board of Police Commissioner for 7 years, and I think one of the reasons why they aren't able to get recruit officers, number one, is that the reputation that the police department has gained by brutality. The number of millions of dollars they paid out where they mistreated persons, civil rights violation under the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. And I think that that's one of the things. One of it is the reputation, particularly with African-American officers, the reputation they have as it relates to the African-American community. And the former chief didn't have a good relationship with any community out there.
That's right.
But then you go back to Kelly, even. Kelly had a deaf ear as it relates to the African-American community. He became much more involved when he became, after Reagan appointed him as the FBI director. In fact, I was on the Board of Regents of Central Missouri State down in Warrensburg, and Kelly was the commencement speaker. And we had lunch, and I heard him say to the president of Levenger, who was the president of CMSU, he said, "Is that Hal Brooks sitting over there?" He said, "Yes." So when he made his speech, he digressed from his speech and said, "Before I get into my speech, I want to apologize to someone." And I was sitting there on the Board of Regents, and he apologized to me because the kind of things that I had said to him from 61 to 64, came in 61, I left in 64, and he said could come true, that he had to go to the FBI to find out. Now, I don't know how well he was in the FBI as far as equal opportunity in dealing with complaints, but I know he was in Kansas City. So I think that's one of the reasons why you're not attracting person. Then, there are times when the city has appropriated money to the police department. You see, in this case of being independent of the city appropriates money, but then the police department decides what it wants to do with it, which is, that's not the best thing to do. And so rather than to hire officers back there, they did some other thing with the money. And so they're 300 officers short now. And that's a good, but that's not the reason why crime is the way it is, because police officers really don't solve crime. They're preventive in some way. Prevent crime. So I think that's a long way to kind of answer your question, but I think that's one of the reasons, and is because the money that's appropriated, there are times when the police department did not use it to increase the number of police officers. And the citizens ought to be saying, if there was a Sid Willens here, it would be different, because Sid would go to Sid had control. They followed him around the media like they would the president. And when Sid spoke, the media listened, and the community listened. And I think that we really need that kind of situation today. I know that Laura's organization has worked with that, but again, local control versus state control is hard to move, because nothing that the mayor and city council has to say except X number of dollars of budget each fiscal year.
Do you have anything to add to that, Laura?
Yeah, I think Mr. Brooks summarized it really well. We give now by state law 25% of our city's general revenue to the police department. And once they receive it, we have zero control over how it's spent. Even if it's line item in a budget, in the agreement, they get to spend it however they choose once they receive it. So there is more than ample money to hire the amount of officers they need to hire. to give the raises that they need to give and all those things. We're not anti, police at Moore Square, but we have filed a lawsuit with 3 black women plaintiffs, and our organization's I'm kind of buried in the background as one of the plaintiffs, to receive local control back from the state. And it's a state lawsuit in state court that you could find right now. Nareen Stokes, whose son was killed by KCPD some years ago, she's one of the plaintiffs. But yeah, in short, in fact, when we as a city made a maneuver to sequester some of the money and spend it on the right things with the police department, not claw it back, but just say, we want you to do X, Y, and Z with these dollars. When Mayor Quentin Lucas did that, what the Board of Police Commission did is they used some of our money to sue us so they wouldn't have to be accountable for our money. So we were paying for both the plaintiff and the defense side of that case, and at the end of the day, we all lost.
It's interesting, before the bright senator from Platte County up in what's the little town, the Parkville, introduced the statute, and it passed both houses and signed by the governor. The city was already giving the police department over the amount that the statute called for. Well, one thing that he did not realize, that the police chief's salary is also controlled by the state legislature. And so what happened, and the reason why, and God bless our present chief, but the reason why they didn't get more applicants is because there was a cap within the statute. Now, in his brightness, and I hope somebody here gets to him and tell him what Albrook said, but in his brightness, he forgot to look at the police chief. So I think there's about 150, it's a city of 500,000 people, with all the crime and the violence and the situation that occurred between police and the community. He only attracted those folks who were either lower than the salary or just above. And of course, that limited of who made application. And saying nothing about the present chief, that she's not qualified or anything like that, but you would have gotten a wider spread of candidates to choose from. She might have made it there, but at the same, so all these kind of things are political. And although when I came in the department in '54, it was the end of the Pendergast and the Mafia days, but for the first 2 years of my term, we saw that very clearly. Still pay off within in the police department, in City Hall, the departments, and as a young black cop, not only had a problem because of the color of my skin, but also in terms of where I wrote, where we wrote. In fact, if you read my book, Binding Us Together, I'd like to plug that in if you don't mind, they called us the 3 Bs, Bumpus, Brooks, and Bowie. And we decided to do some things in the black community, but in spite of what our white counterparts were doing, and the city, and the Board of Police Commissioners, we got by with that. We always were legal. We never violated anybody's rights. That's Sid was my always. I would go to Sid and say, "What do you think about this?" And it's legal. Yes, it's legal. But the police department hasn't changed in terms of its hierarchy since it came that way in 1939 when they cleaned out City Hall and the police department went under state control.
Excellent. Any other questions?
No, just use the mic.
Any other questions?
I want to say one more thing about Sid.
Yes.
Can I do this?
Please.
Okay, so Sid always went everywhere with a yellow pad, wrote everything down.
Yes.
If you want to know how to be effective, Sid would say, "I don't know what I think until I see what I say." Okay, I don't know what I think until I see what I say. And one is he wrote everything down. That's where he got all his facts from, always taking notes. And the other thing is he would never work with the committee because they didn't do anything. I mean, he refused to work with the committee.
In all your parks and all your cities, you'll find no statues of committees. That was his one-liner. Please.
The stuffed animal that was in many of the film is there. What's the significance? How does that fit in?
Excellent. Okay, so when Sid's wife passed, Lorraine, he realized that he was feeling depressed and he was feeling lonely, and he recognized that he was lonely between the hours of 5 and 8 p.m. when you would normally have dinner. So he started taking people out to dinner as his therapy, and he also discovered these singing and dancing dolls that he just thought were the most incredible thing, because you just push the little button and then it. So he became a wholesaler of these dolls and started taking them to every dinner date, every excursion. He would bring one along, and he ended up bringing them to the Village Shalom Alzheimer's unit and bringing smiles to the faces of those who hadn't really been participating as lively in life. And he, there's this famous story about a black Santa. He went to Walmart and he saw a life-size dancing Santa up front, and he just was like, he's like, oh, Lorraine would have loved this. I have to have it. So he goes and gets the Santa in the basket and takes it to the register, and the lady says, "Sir, do you realize that you've gotten a black Santa?" And he's like, and he didn't really quite know, but then he's like, well, I've been a civil rights lawyer. Like, of course I want the black Santa. He's like, yes, we'll take it. So he buys the black Santa, takes it home, and sets it up in his living room front area, where he also has a motion sensor alarm in his house. And so the mailman came to drop mail in the front door mail slot, which set off the black dancing Santa, which then set off the alarm. So the police came and pulled their guns on the Santa. And then my grandfather showed up, and he ended up giving the Santa to the police department. So there's this picture of the Santa with the police officers, and it's just sort of this ridiculous story. Anyways, I inherited a bunch of these because my mother was downsizing, and at Beth Torah we have a traveling prayer bear dove that's out on the breakfast table. And once I realized that we had Dove the prayer bear, and then I had like all these animated dancing prayer bears, I just started incorporating them into our religious school program, and then I just felt like they were good to have here today. So
I'm going to tell you, I have two of those,
Yeah.
and when my great-grands and great-greats come over, the batteries go, because they go in and
Yeah, he gives them to everybody. This one, they all play something, so we can play with them afterwards. But thank you for asking about those. Sid loved humor. That was Hellraising with humor was his like most recent tagline. Any other questions? I would like to just ask if you could touch upon more just how you see that the work that Sid was doing is playing out in today's world. How can citizens get involved? What could we be doing to support your organizations or any organization that you think is doing good work? How can we continue to live and embody this legacy?
So, one of the things I wrote down was, from the film, was being defiant isn't against the law. And being defiant isn't against the law. And another thing that I wrote down, this was a quote from the Pope visit, I believe, audacity gets things done. And then I think the overarching theme is courage, from what Rabbi Levin said, who knew your grandfather personally, but courage for sure. I think here's the deal. We don't need to be a committee to get things done, but we do need to be in relationship with each other. And so just very simply for us, you contact us through more2.org, MORE2. It's actually an exponent, but more2.org. And I'm happy to meet with anybody. I meet with people all week, every week, and connect them to work that's actually getting done. I don't think that we have the privilege to sit out anymore, and I think that for a long time, I included as a social worker in this community, I saw work and I thought, well, that's what other people do. But at some point I realized I'm the people that needs to be doing this. And we all need to be the people that we're waiting for at this point. We all need to be the people that say, yes, we can, or si se puede, or however we say it. We all need to be the people to rise up right now. And in our own way, you know, it doesn't have to look like a snarky, loud redhead in public, or it doesn't have to look like Mr. Brooks in public, but I think if you show up in your own way and build a relationship with folks like us, we'll take the work to new heights together.
You know, I don't see us as a community, and Kansas City is only a microcosm of what urban communities are like, as being the activism that I saw during Sid's reign. Because, for example, when Detective DeValcanier killed a lamb in his own property without a warrant, there was a gun that never was found but wasn't there at the time, and he so happened that lamb was talking on his phone, and the gun was there placed by either Valkner or his detective friend. When he was pardoned, does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Pardons and those kind of things going on? When he was pardoned before Parsons went out of office, the community, he was, I think it was a bench trial, so he didn't go before a jury.
Right.
He went to the bench trial before Judge Rounds. Found guilty with all the evidence with him, and then spent about, 14, 16 months in jail, and then was pardoned by the government. There's those of us in the black community knew that was going to happen based on our own, particularly those of us, I'm 92, I know I don't look a day over 110, but I'm going to say, we knew, we would have bet anyway, and some of our friends of the lighter hue, we said, oh no, he's not going to, listen, we said, he's going to get pardoned before Parson leaves office, and it happened. And it's based on experiences and that intuition that you have based on your own personal experiences over time. I can't believe that if Sid had been living, that Sid would not have said something about that injustice based on the so-called criminal justice system. And we don't have that today. We don't have it. And I spoke on a panel a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying, we as African Americans, we as black folks in the community, we become so middle class oriented, move to the suburbs and all those kind of things. We forget whose shoulders we stand on and even allow us to live in the suburbs. And therefore we become complacent in about what's happening. And so, I congratulate Laura and her organization because she's able to pull together NAACP, the Urban League, SCLC, and other groups to take on these issues. But too bad we're not in the era of Sid Williams.
I'm Brian Mann. I'm the chaplain manager at Advent Health South Overland Park. And I'm also the chair of the DEI committee there. And so my question is, in an environment where DEI, which really was set up to fight against discrimination against anybody, when it is under attack now, how would you, what advice would you give to DEI councils or committees? Committee, that's the bad word, but in this day and time?
Is that to anybody? I guess I'll kick it off. First of all, I think it's become a national trend now. From the White House to the outhouse, and if there are those of you who know what outhouses are, I lived in that area. Outhouses, when your main house burned down, you still had someplace to stay. But it's a national trend. But I think only voices, your voice, even if they turn the mic off, you still have to speak loud.
Yes.
Protesting against it. And I'm not sure for this next few years what good that's going to do. I think the courts at some way have to step in. It's a new name for affirmative action. And you know how that was felt. You know, even in the Civil Rights Act of 1964, it was signed by Lyndon Baines Johnson as a result of Dr. King's efforts. We thought we was on our way, and we left that whole period, and here we are here in the 21st century, which is a disgrace to what's happening. And I hope and pray that everybody's looking at what's going on, CNN, MSNBC, and even look at Fox sometime if you want to get angry. You know, so I think it's difficult, but I think his voice is going to be heard. You can't do anything about it because you're not at that level. You're not the president or CEO of the company, whether it's Walmart or Target or whatever. But I think that at least my mother always told me this. She said, "Baby, as a black young man," I was 17 years old my senior year, and she told me, she said, "As a black young man, sometimes white folks will do things to you or say things to you that you can't do anything about, but at least let them know that you know what they're doing." That's manhood, she said. And so I think even if you can't do anything about it, the voices, not just women's voices and people of color's voices, but voices of those who have not been in that era, understanding of what's happened to them is because of their religion or their ethnicity or their gender or whatever, needs to be heard. And I don't think that whether you're a Republican, Democrat, vegetarian, or whatever, you're saying to me things that are wrong, you need to take a position. If not, you're just as guilty as those who are doing it.
Amen.
So, this is hard. The reason this is hard is DEI, which we worked for, my friends worked for, the people I work with in all these organizations work for, has been used to raise the level of anti-Semitism in this country and literally around the world. And so I know Jews in particular who will not work for a DEI anymore. Not me. They won't work for DEI because it's been used to hate Jews. Now, the mistake that has been made, we were taught, and we believe, you judge a person by their actions, not the actions of some group that you have arbitrarily put them into, not the actions of some group that you have defined that they happen to be part of. I don't care whether somebody says one group has a lower IQ as a group than somebody else. That individual may be the smartest person you ever met in your life. And if you discriminate against that person, regardless, right? I mean, we know people who are Down syndrome, who are an inspiration to everyone around them. You wouldn't necessarily expect it, right? Because they're in a group that's defined as being different or inferior in some way. Well, that's what's happened. Jews have been defined by a leftist ideology as being colonialists. Because we've been defined as being colonialists, it has something to do with the way those people are also defined in the state of Israel. Well, what does that have to do with me sitting in Beth Torah? Person to person with you, trying to do something about Kansas City. And yet, we need to teach our children, the next generation, and everybody around us, judge a person on their actions, and then you work with just people to achieve the goals that we can all agree to together as motivating what this country is supposed to be about. And there's a requirement there, and that is I got to know who you are. Me classifying you by who I think you might be by your appearance won't cut it. So we're in a very difficult time right now. Jewish community is very afraid, right? We're not threatened like the black community in Kansas City is, not by a long shot. But I'll tell you that a lot of people are awfully afraid. So there needs to be a change.
the rise of anti-Semitism right here in the beautiful Johnson County, particularly among young people in the various schools. It do make a difference. Now that you heard us say, it do make a difference when you're going to school and and I always wait, where is the white Christian community in all of this? And the Catholic Church, and my grandson Damon and I said back there, we may be the only, my wife, late wife and I, we were Catholics most of the time. But where did the Catholic Church during the Holocaust? And where is it doing all these other kind of things? Where is the Christian church in general when it happens to either whether it be Jews or whether it be African Americans or whether it be, and I don't want to get into the whole bit of same-sex marriage and all like that because that's another world for them. But at least those things that are very visible. Where is the Christian church? My grandson and I attended the church this morning, and you know, sometimes I wonder, why am I here? Why am I here? You come to these sacred places to leave differently, don't you? Don't you? When you leave here, don't you feel just? Otherwise, no need of coming. Don't you feel different once you leave your place of worship? You should. Are we really our brother's keeper? Our brothers and our sisters' keeper? I don't know. I don't want to get over into the rabbi's field, but in the beginning, I think both in the Torah as well as the Bible, after creating made heaven and earth and everything therein, the fish of the sea, the fowl of the air, the creatures that crawl, and it's interesting, then decided to make humankind, how in the likeness image of the Creator. That means we're all connected. And folks who, like myself, who are Christians that sit into those pews around this world, around this nation, I bet of the 535 people in Congress, I bet 80% of them, I bet, profess to be Christians. What does that mean to be a Christian? Christ-like?
Thank you.
I just posed the question. I don't want to answer.
So we have time for one more question before we're going to hear from some final remarks and then continue, but yes.
Thank you. I like your reaction. I think it's time for us to get in politics. In other words, the election is 2 years from now for the House, and that means the election starts today, and it definitely starts within the next several months. And if we don't ensure that the candidates that get elected in any district, I don't care if they're Republican or Democratic, are not reacting to the current policies in a way we think they should be, then we ought to promote candidates that do have a sound philosophy in head and are going to stand up for principles. Now, up to now, I wouldn't have said churches and synagogues should be political organizations, but I'm not sure anymore. So your thoughts?
Well, we're not going to get into the whole situation of the United States and the presidency for sure right now, because you all don't have the time. Okay? Let me just say in terms of Sid. Sid was undaunted about the truth. He also, the one thing that I feel has been unmentioned here or insufficiently is Sid was so in love with Lorraine that his love, I'm convinced, motivated a good bit of his activities that I don't think was adequately captured by the film. And the reason I'm bringing that up in the context of your question is we really do need the support of the people that we love. And we need to give them that support as well. In Sid's case, it was the background, I'm convinced, for a lot of the good work that he did and his ability to be undaunted was the amount that he loved Lorraine and that she supported and loved him. Having said that, we have to stand tall for principle and stop lying to one another and demand the truth. We are in a country right now that has been overtaken by deceit and lies. And I would say that the hallmark of Sid's work, and the reason for that yellow pad, Sid depended upon discovering what the truth was and putting the facts before people in a powerful way that he thought would be, because he said it himself in the film, that he thought would be effective. In other words, don't pursue what you're never going to achieve, but have the courage to pursue what is doable.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Thank you, Rabbi Levin, Laura McDonald, and Alvin Brooks. Thank you for being here today.
I know that we could probably go on for hours, but we are running a little bit long, and I know that people have things to do. So I just want to, again, say thank you. I'm going to bring up to the stage an old dear friend and family friend of mine, Netta Meltzer, who is going to be coming up from the JCRB to give some closing remarks before I send you off. So please put your hands together for Netta, everybody.
Thank you, Sarah. I promise I'll make this quick because we all have a tour to go on. And first, I just want to say thank you to Sarah Glass for putting this really meaningful program together. We're so excited at JCRB AJC to be able to support her and be a part of this. So thank you for doing this. At the Jewish Community Relations Bureau, AJC, community is in everything we do. It's in our name. It is the lens through which we understand our role and our work, which is to combat anti-Semitism and to pursue justice for all. To me, this program is a symbol of the necessity of community and of the impact community can have. It illustrated what happens when we invest in it, what we gain when we gather, when we remember our shared history, when we envision our collective future, when we see each other in the fullness of who we are rather than the concepts or ideas that oversimplify identity and connection in such a disconnected world. So simply put, this moment calls for more opportunities like this one, and I hope each one of us walks away from today committed to finding ways to create those opportunities, more opportunities like this in partnership together. So thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Netta. And I just want to say thank you to Dave Zucker for representing our tech and Beth Torres sound and helping me out with this. Thank you to the JCRB for sponsoring the breakfast, and to those of you that donated for the program. I thank you. You can still go online and donate if you'd like to, and I'm going to be starting a social justice fund, I think, so that we can continue to support and put on programs like this. I want to just say, if you are going to take the driving tour after this, you don't have to, but if you'd like to, we're gonna just sort of caravan, and really it'll just be choose your own adventure because people will go at their own pace. But there is an app that you have to get on your phone. So if you go to the Beth Torah website, click on social media, and then on social justice, and then the Hellraiser page, then you can find the links to the film, the trailer, the book. There's a book that I wrote of my grandfather's memoirs. I have a few copies here, but mostly it's available online. I'm happy to sell you one or tell you about that. And if you want to take the driving tour, get the app, because that will be what feeds your GPS and tells you what we're going to be listening to. The tour takes 90 minutes, starts at Shawnee Mission East, and like I said, if you decide that this is already enough information, you could do it at another time, another day, but a few of us I know are going to be doing that. So thank you all so much for being here. Mazel tov, Shehechianu. Thank you.